So welcome to this workshop discussion on central bank innovations, offline payments, and the road to financial inclusion. Before we jump in, I just want to comment on the last discussion with Scott and Andreas. This is my first UBRI. The quality of that conversation to me was very significant. You can see the seriousness with which the Bank of Canada is exploring these issues. And I find that that thoughtfulness to be very heartening as we go down this path. And you know, I constantly am learning from conversations like that. So thanks to the prior panelists. Looking forward to the discussion here. We have two expert speakers to continue the central bank digital currency conversation. We're joined by Dr. Kenichi Ueda from University of Tokyo, who's an economist, and Dr. Marcos Simplicio, who's a cryptographer from University of Sao Paulo. So we're going to be covering some different geographies and topics here. Just to set the context for the conversation, and some of this came up in the last discussion. Many of you in the room will know that on the order of 130 banks, central banks globally are exploring CBDCs. They represent on the order of 90% of global GDP. Central banks around the world, Bank of Canada among them, are exploring projects and piloting and doing research. The Bank of International Settlements has launched an innovation hub network. They recently opened one here locally in Toronto. They've got dozens of CBDC or CBDC-related projects happening. The question is why? What's going on? Why is all of this happening now? It's cascading around the world in the last few years. What are the implications of that? What are some of the challenges of these implementations as they move forward? And what's the direction of travel? Where are we going to end up in 5, 10 years from now, or even sooner? We're going to touch on all of these topics with our panelists today. We may not answer them, but those are the kinds of areas that I look forward to exploring here. If we have time, I'm going to try to take some questions. I know we haven't done that yet in the panel, but if there's something pressing, when we get to like 5 minutes left, please feel free to put up your hand, and we've got mics, so we'll see if we can make that happen. Marcos, let's start with Brazil, and this came up in the last panel. There was a conversation around the digital real and PIX. Tell us about the digital real. What is it? Why does it matter? Why do they need it if they have PIX? And what is the central bank looking to achieve?
That's actually a good question because, well, I'm not sure there is a specific goal. Today it's a lab. It's a huge lab where, well, they do have some requirements. They want to build with the technology. It's based on blockchain. I mean, that was defined at least for this test, for these first experiments. It's going to be built on top of Hyperledger Besu. So the whole idea is to, well, can we do something that is interesting, novel, that can help with financial inclusion, help with making transactions faster, more on the wholesale than on the retail. On retail, people use PIX. I mean, it's instant. It was said already, but instantaneous payment system that works very well through banks. I mean, it's built on top of the identities that are already widely used in the country, like it's called CPF. It's the national number of anyone, so you can send money not to a bank account, but to an identifier that is nationally accepted, or your cell phone, or an email address, or you can just generate a key and whenever you wish, I mean, on demand. And so for retail, this is very interesting. It's not based on blockchain at all, but for what people are discussing is mostly digital assets. I mean, how can we, as a central bank, do something for enabling digital assets that are somehow controlled, like, you know, central bank needs some control on top of things, and help people innovate on this digital finance universe, because there are still things that are done like on paper as traditionally done on paper. So they want to build a platform where innovation can be built. So the requirements are essentially interoperability with what we have today, not necessarily with the world. Privacy, which is not very well defined. They want privacy, so which ideas you have for privacy? They are inviting people to come with ideas for users, for all transactions between banks. It's not completely clear. And programmability, so you have the flexibility to build new stuff on top of it. What will come out of it, we will still know. As I said, it's a lab.
Great. I want to come back to some of those topics, specifically privacy and programmability. Interoperability is obviously part of the conversation. Just one more question on the market structure in Brazil. If you have Pix, and that's your retail payment solution, it's not distributed DLT based, and it works very well. The digital real, the idea, the premise, the current pilot is that it will be a blockchain-based solution. Can you speak a little bit about the difference of the implications for those two different sort of paradigms, really? And what do you get out of DLT that you may or may not be able to get out of a traditional system?
Okay, Pix is essentially done. There's no programmability. You just do what is already there, which is payments. It's just like you can say it's FTs, like fungible tokens going from one user to another. So it builds on this what banks already had. We could, for a long time, send money from one bank to another. We just needed, to know the bank account, the bank account formats are different, so it may be hard to know if you are sending money to the correct person. And also, there were some fees involved. The revolution of PIC was, it's instantaneous. You can do, it's instantaneous at any time of the day. So you can do like 2 a.m., you can send money, how much money you want to whoever you want. And you don't pay any tax, so any fees for doing it. So that's actually one reason why it was very well accepted. It's a cheaper way to move money around. But that was already there. With CBDC, for more on the wholesale, it's a paradigm shift because when you say programmability, the idea is that, it's not just moving money, it's moving, I don't know, the tokenization of this glass, this water. You can tokenize things. If people are interested in buying stuff, whatever it is that can be tokenized, and it's backed by the central bank, then you have some new ideas coming up. And if you have a platform for doing that, and that's why programmability is very important there, then you can do things that are not only payments. I think that's the main difference they're looking for.
Thank you. Kenichi, would be great to get your perspective on the landscape in Asia. I know when we spoke recently, we spent some time talking about the digital Bekong in Cambodia. There's a lot of activity in the region. Would love to get your thoughts on the market, and feel free to go specific on any one country that you think is relevant.
I see. Thank you very much for having me. And then in Asia, I don't know much about, but I do know already that last panel said China, India going on. China already experimenting it. And then I do know the Ripple CBDC team working on Bhutan and Palau. And it's not Asia, but in Montenegro too, as far as I know. And then Ripple helping those central bank. And then another one, Soramitsu, which is a Japanese company, helping Cambodia Central Bank, which already kind of launched CBDC. They call it Kozai CBDC in 2020, October 2020. And then Laos right now, it's working on the same company working on. And then Thailand separately doing on. Indonesia is very close to launch pure form of CBDC as far as I know. And so that the Asian developing countries are really keen on issuing or experimenting right now. Among them, I think most interesting country as of now, to me at least, is Cambodia, because Cambodia already launched October 2020 their own, they call Kozai CBDC. I think it's really, I could call it CBDC, but anyway, they call Bakon. By the way, it's a Bakon system, but their local currency's name is not Bakon. Local currency's name is, looks like Brazil, but it's Riel, R-I-E-L. It's not real, but we call it Riel. It's a bit difficult to pronounce it for me, but Riel. And anyway, and then this Cambodia's case is interesting because it's already there. That means we can go there, get the data, and what's going on, how people are using, how the shops are accepting, which fortunately I got some grant from UBRI related grant, so that's why that money is, I think I well spent on that field survey a bit, especially last year, 2022. Although the problem is that because of COVID, we cannot really do it. It's randomized way. It's more like a SNS-based online survey plus individual survey on shops. But anyway, the important thing is that I think 2 or 3 important empirical results I can talk is one is about, well, I think last year I'm in University of College London talking like this about 3 possible substitutions. One is CBDC is by intention could substitute paper money. Second is not so intention, but it could substitute bank deposit, which may be creating disintermediation. That's some kind of risk there, and especially US people talking about a lot. And then third one is substitution or competition against foreign currency, right? So that in Cambodia, like small developing country, I don't know about Canada, but in Cambodia, like small developing country, especially Asian country, kind of I feel they fear about more intrusion of the US dollar and Chinese yuan coming in their country. So they wanna keep more so-called monetary sovereignty or at least seniorage income. We do know, like IMF working paper showing at least developing countries still seniorage income by issuing currency is a great, quite sizable in their kind of fiscal revenue. So it's from that point of view, it's kind of important. Anyway, so the Cambodia issue there, but the first thing, I don't know about the paper money, but the first thing about competition with private sector banks or bank deposits, I would say as of 2022 early stage, they are not so well accepted in a retail shop basis. The reason I can think of 3, could be 4, 3 things. One is because their called Bakon system is a smartphone-based QR code system. They have to show the QR code and then transact. However, for the shop, in a typical shop like this counter, right, in a Starbucks, whatever, anywhere, they have their own, there are lots of competitors around there. Already the biggest bank is ABA Bank. It's actually Canadian bank subsidiary, they said. And Akreda Bank, local bank, and Alipay, Chinese one. So those guys are already having a real estate on the store front QR code. So the additional QR code for the Bakon is very, there's not much place there. So wait, that's one issue. That's why early 2022, it's not going well. Second issue is obviously how convenient, or the convenience of using ABA Bank's smartphone app versus Bakon app. backbone app is distributed by CBDC, central bank. So the convenience, also network, because many people using it, I'm using it, kind of those network is part of convenience package. And the third one, it's kind of difficult to say, but it's also trust issues, because currently the largest share, market share is ABA Bank, as I said, backed by the Canadian parent bank. May have more, people may trust more than the central bank, which I don't know, actually, but it looks like maybe that's a part of the competition. And then, just one thing I have to say on this real estate on the shop counter, that Cambodia government recognized, so that they introduced common QR code system for all those vendors and try to install it from July 2022. That's after our survey, by the way. So currently we are not so sure, but we want to go back to look at what's going on. And then interestingly, this common QR code system is also promoted to be introduced in Vietnam, Laos, and Thailand. So they're supposed to have the same one. So it's kind of interesting thing going on. But anyway, that's so far, I think,
your last
empirical results.
Your last point around some of the practical challenges to adoption cuts across the entire industry, and we've seen some of these different efforts to launch a CBDC. I don't know if I would say they've fallen flat, but they probably haven't met expectations. There's some real forethought that needs to go into creating the right product for the right market and making sure that it solves the intended challenges. So I think that's one of the things that we're learning along the way. Going back, Marcos, to Sao Paulo and the work happening in Brazil. You mentioned programmability several times in your comment. In your comments, when I hear programmability, I think that sounds great, and then my immediate next thought is risk. You have to balance this exciting, compelling innovation with the real-world implications of potentially introducing risk. Smart contracts are not, there are considerations there where they may not be appropriate or suitable in a highly risk-sensitive environment. Would love to get your thoughts on ways some of those risks could be mitigated, in addition to some of the other technical requirements of, programmability, interoperability, and privacy. Those are the three I think that you mentioned. Start with programmability and share some of your thinking on those different requirements.
So far, it's programmability, but it's not necessarily programmability by anyone. It's not like, well, anyone can just launch its smart contract on the network and it's going to be used and backed by the central bank. The idea is that, okay, you have an interesting idea, you can use each one of those contracts that we built, we tested. Even then you can have problems, but in that case, it's at least the central bank's fault for having a faulty smart contract there. So programmability probably will be kind of tamed, or there will be a tutelage for what can enter into the system. And that should at least mitigate some of the risks, like a programmer that did a mistake, and so lots of money just get drained. So far this is the first idea. The academia and also industry are building also some programs to help identifying issues before launch. The first talk was about that. For example, like checking paths, like it was the flow of execution that are too different from what was tested. So while this seems different than what it should be, there may be a vulnerability here. So there are tools. They are not perfect. They have never been perfect for any piece of software, but probably, it's going to be tested a lot before it launches. Actually, there is an interesting parenthesis here. Pix, when it launched, it had a vulnerability. It's not very well known, but whoever gets the Pix, if it's not a person but a company, they have to pay a small fee. and the small fee, the minimal small fee was above 1 cent. But then if you sent 1 cent for someone, that person would pay 2 cents for the central bank. So you could drain your target just sending enough 1 cent transactions to that company, in that case, not that person. That was fixed, so that's why I can talk about it. But I mean, there will be vulnerabilities. So you need contingencies like, well, first test a lot, and second, insurance, whatever already is in place is something that's going to be there.
And the expectation is that different stakeholders in the marketplace, private sector businesses, payment providers, they will be architecting these smart contracts for evaluation and then potentially inclusion, if you will, with the digital real. Is that a fair statement? Yes.
Yeah, most likely. That's under discussion, but it seems to be the case. Anyone can propose, but it will only enter the system after it is considered good enough by the central banks. That's my impression, at least.
Yeah. Please, Kenichi.
No, I just want to talk about risk. Can I?
Please,
risks
yes.
On more like economics point of view, on the risk of potential collapse of central bank or the potential collapse of trust on a local currency. At least in Cambodia's case, that could be happening because of, I think, design. Technological design looks perfect because it's working. And legal design, not so clear, but looks like no economist is actually thinking about there. So that I think 3 kinds of thinking have to be somehow coordinated well. But in the Cambodia case, I think at least I see 2 big risks. One is Cambodia, like China, they use 2-tier system. In a sense, there's a wholesale portion of the interbank market is kind of, it's now they use back-on system. That portion is successful, especially legacy system is almost gone. All the new system is there. That's fine. But then each users, retail users, have an account in a private bank and wallet in a sense. But it's again, the smartphone app is distributed by the central bank, and they just users just choose their kind of bank, like ABA Bank or Accreda Bank or City Bank. No, there's no City Bank there, but anyway, ABA Bank, Accreda Bank, something like that. And then central bank keeps saying we are not liable on that, but actually, as we don't have like red Bitcoin or blue Bitcoin, right? It's a once you converted your paper money into this back-on real, it's there immediately, instantly there, right? You can't really put it. This is Accreda Bank portion of the back-on real. This is ABA Bank portion. It's there, so that they, after lots of email conversation with the central bank guy, find out indeed they admit it's 100% liability in the end, almost immediately, in de facto, because it's a part of the district ledger. So although they want to say about it's actually not my liability, but it actually is, because technologically so.
Yes.
Although they don't want to say so in a legally. So it's a kind of murky, kind of untransparent communication could be bad for the keeping trust for the local currency. And the second is it's more important, more bad thing. I mean, worse thing that Cambodia central bank doing, which I hope no other central bank doing it, is that they don't recognize the US dollar as a legal tender. They recognize the real as a legal tender, as I said. However, on the back-on system, they issue US dollar too. That means they are kind of acting like stable coin issuer without 100% backing of US dollar assets. And they also shouldn't call that US dollar. They should call something else. Right? Because once they call it US dollar, if the people want to come to withdraw paper money US dollar from because bank account can easily transfer to the bank deposit, and the bank deposit, US dollar based bank deposit, they can get the US dollar paper money. So that, in that sense, they are kind of, well, first of all, no other central bank other than the US Federal Reserve Bank system can issue US dollar. That's totally wrong. So anyway, what they are doing is they try to de-dollarize. They try to get paper money dollar into their system, so that's their intention. But in the end, they are doing very risky.
Is the dollar equivalent that they're issuing designed to be redeemable by dollars in circulation in the economy? Is that the intention?
Yeah, I mean, currently already 80% of the bank deposit is US dollar term in Cambodia, and based on our survey, 60% of the transaction in Phnom Penh, the capital city, is done via the US dollar terms. So that's why they want to issue US dollar version back on. But again, for the real, central bank can issue always their local currency, right? Yes. They can always print. But the US dollar, they cannot print out. That's a problem. They shouldn't do it. And that's one. And on top of that, actually, it's a 60% or 80% as dollarized, and people still use real for very cheap goods. They have about 4,000 real equal $1 US. But lots of goods are sold under the $1, right? But in the paper money, they don't have a US coin. They have a US dollar, $1, $5, $10 bills circulating, but they don't have a quarter or dime circulating inside. So instead of those less than $1 goods, they have been using real actually a lot. But with the US dollar digital back-on system, actually they are now can use $0.01. I mean one. Dime version of dollar. So that it's kind of dollarization is. With digital technology, even more dollarization looks like happening. That's another point. Of course, this is also more important. The more point is, as the last panel said, with the digital technology before, those developing countries become dollarized because paper money is actually physically there. Paper US dollar is there. But now, with if the Federal Reserve Bank or Chinese yuan is already start doing it. It's coming available in a digital on a smartphone. It's very easy to import those money into the country. So it's much more risk of dollarization, yuanization going on. That's another. Well, it's more broader issue. But anyway,
these are entire topics we could probably spend hours and hours on. We have about 90 seconds left, and I wanted to leave a little bit more time. Are there any pressing questions in the room that we should capture? If not, we can continue. But before we end, if anybody has a question, there's some microphones in the back. And while we do that, okay, we've got one up here with the gentleman in the blue jacket.
Yeah, can you comment on the IMF's initiative to become a hub for CBDCs to provide one thing that CBDC doesn't provide, and that's interoperability across different countries?
Yes, probably. I do know BIS is more active. Maybe IMF is active, but I think BIS is active.
The BIS has certainly got a very active role. The IMF is leading a series of workshops and sessions with central banks in an organized fashion. It's a lot of the developing economies, and they're availing resources to help them understand how they might introduce a CBDC in the best way for their specific economy. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
But
Okay.
I do think one big change the past 2 years, 2-3 years is that, as you know, before in a traditional international clearing settlement system is at SWIFT with US dollar. And the SWIFT system is essentially before G7 or G10 countries ban the Russian transactions, it was worked as a kind of international infrastructure of payments. Everyone trusted it. But after this Russian incident, I believe some countries has less trust on the SWIFT in the sense, whenever something happens, maybe it will ban the transactions. Then I think that's one of the reasons suddenly lots of international payment system without using SWIFT is popping up everywhere, and people try. And at the same time, obviously, this crypto or blockchain technology has been developed a lot. That I think it's going. Seems to me.
I've got the red light flashing, and I don't want to get in trouble with a run of show here. So, gentlemen, thank you for the wonderful discussion, and look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Thank you.